Good evening, colleagues and members of the public. Please be seated. Thank you. Well, good evening, colleagues, and welcome to this meeting of the Borough Council. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed, and those members of the public in the public gallery and those watching from home, if any member of the public or press would like to record the proceedings, please do so from the public gallery without interfering with the business of this meeting. If the fire alarm sounds, can those sitting in the public gallery exit through the doors behind them, and those sitting in the council chamber, these doors behind me, and make your way out to the front of the town hall. Please ensure your mobile phones are switched off or other electronic devices are switched off or are on silent during the meeting. Any member who wishes to speak on any of the agenda items, please use your microphone. You may not know this, but when we are recording, sometimes people don't use the microphone properly and you're not heard by the people who are watching from home. The full council today will only deal with the business that is set out in the summons. I've received apologies from Councillors Keegan, Carter, Ford, Foreman, Lamont, Leask, Anne Walsh and Mark Walsh. Are there any members or officers aware of any further apologies? Councillor Francis?
Yeah, Councillor Bristow.
Councillor Robertson? Councillor Kilgore?
Mr. Mayor, I've got Councillor Joyce Welsh, Councillor Margaret Melling, and I think that's it. Thank you.
Welsh, Melling and?
Welsh and Melling. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Porthouse?
Did you mention Councillor Keegan?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Yes. And it wasn't Kevin Keegan either, Richie, so. The first item of business is declarations of interest. Does any member wish to make a declaration before we move on to the next item of business? And just before I do so, can I remind colleagues, if you have a disclosable pecuniary interest in any item which prevents you from participating in the debate and any vote, you will need to leave the chamber during that item. So, declarations of interest. Councillor?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to declare an interest.
Can you stand up when you address the Mayor, please? Thank you.
I would like to declare an interest as I'm Chair of Adult and Children's Safeguarding on item 10 on the agenda. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Bell?
Thank you. It's a non-pecuniary interest in item 5, paragraph 3.38. So I'm the local authority representative on the Board of Governors at Bolton School, and they are mentioned in the PFI part of this report. Thank you.
Councillor Mill?
Thank you. I'd like to declare an interest as I'm a co-founder of South Tyneside Tree Action Group regarding item 9. Thank you.
Councillor Best?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 7, paragraph 2.13, as a it's a pecuniary interest, personal interest, because of my involvement with the development of the key food bus, the community bus, and item 10 as a member of South Tyneside fostering panel. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other councillors? Councillor Hunley?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'd like to have a non-disclosable pecuniary interest in item 5, as it's mentioned South Shields Community School, which was the former school that is now Ebony Special Needs School.
Yeah. Councillor Strike?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Non-pecuniary interest, because I'm a governor of Bolton School. Same item 5. Thank you.
Thank you. If something does arise during the course of the meeting and you need to make that declaration, please do so. Okay. The next item of business is the minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 29th of June, 2023. Are they accepted as a correct record? Thank you. John. The next item of business is the minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 26th of July, 2023. Are they accepted as the correct record? And John comes. The next item of business is Mayor's announcements and communications. I only have one for tonight. And colleagues, I would like to wish all the runners in this weekend's Great North Run all the success and energy that they can muster. An absolutely stupendous, fantastic event for charities. Also, it shows off our extremely fantastic coastline and the communities who support that event on the coastline. And of course, South Tyneside residents who give lots to charity and give lots more as well. So it's a case of us being in the national picture, in the United Kingdom picture. And I wish all the runners the very, very best. I know that Councillor Smith is running and is one of the councillors is running. I've also heard a rumour that the chief executive is running as well. But good luck to them all. Let's hope it's not too hot for them. Thank you. I've made an item change tonight in the running order. I'd like to deal with item 10 if you can bring that forward. It's the next item of business. And it's to consider a report of the Acting Director of Children's Services regarding the delivering our vision for fostering in South Tyneside. We have a number of guests with us tonight who play a very, very important role in fostering some of Borough's most vulnerable children, and from whom we will be hearing shortly. I'm going to ask Councillor Adam Ellison, Lead Member for Children's Services and Social Care Change, to introduce our guests, invite them to address the meeting, and then to move the report. Councillor Ellison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm grateful for the opportunity to bring this report to full council this evening. As we know, we're all corporate parents and have a responsibility for the children in our care. Part of carrying out our corporate parenting responsibility for all of us, officers, members and partners, is to be part of promoting fostering across the borough. This report offers an update to South Tyneside's current and planned foster care recruitment and retention activity, which is critical given the need to provide stable homes for children in our care and meet requirements as corporate parents. South Tyneside, alongside other North East councils, have signed up to work together with the backing of the DFE to set up a regional support hub to facilitate the recruitment of foster carers. The fostering service has been working hard to increase the number of in-house foster carers that we have, working within the community with the support of our foster carers to increase the profile of foster care. South Tyneside has been very successful in the rollout of the Mockingbird model, with 4 constellations launched to date. The model is a successful model as it mirrors an extended family, and in doing so supports foster carers and children alike. And when I've attended sessions with the foster carers, they've spoken extremely positively about Mockingbird and are grateful for the support that the model offers. Part of the government response to the report Stable Homes Built on Love was to look at recruitment and retention of foster carers, and an investment of over £3 million has been provided for the creation of a North East Pathfinder. South Tyneside, alongside the other 11 North East councils, have signed up to work on this, together with the DFE, to co-design a regional support hub to provide support to those interested in applying for foster care. Sunderland City Council, in collaboration with Together for Children, will lead the Pathfinder programme for the region, with the regional support hub operational in September 2023. In addition to the hub, the DFE want us to understand the appetite for further expansion of the Mockingbird model. A positive response has come from South Tyneside, who have now successfully obtained additional grant funding for expansion of the model. The process in which we will then support hub carers will operate as we originally did, and will continue to have control over the actual assessments and approval for the foster carers in South Tyneside. The Pathfinder project will involve an increase in communications to promote race, disability, gender, age, sexual orientation, religion, and belief with respect to our potential foster carers. Here at South Tyneside, we've experienced a reduction in the number of foster carers that we have. Our plan to enhance the current and planned foster care recruitment activity to increase local foster carers with this collaborative regional approach that will offer an additional interest in fostering. I strongly encourage colleagues in this chamber and beyond to promote foster care across the borough and speak with the team if they do find anybody who might be interested in signing up as a foster carer, and additional information can be found online as well. So we've invited two sets of our foster carer families who are keen to tell you more about their role and experience within South Tyneside, including the support that they receive. So I'm delighted to introduce Sandra, Sonia and Dan to full council today. Sandra, with over 18 years of foster care experience, won the Foster Care of the Year Award at a recent event this year and has recently moved from the role of mainstream foster carer to the role of community foster carer. Sonia and Dan are home carers within the Mockingbird programme. They support 6 other families within their constellation, offering support to foster carers and children and young people, including sleepovers and arranging monthly activities. Mr. Mayor, can I invite our guests to say a few words and move the report? Thank you.
Certainly. And I don't know who's going to speak first, but you're more than welcome. Thank you.
Hi, so I'm Sandra. As Adam said, I've been a foster carer for 18 years. My husband and I decided to foster with the council, made a conscious decision to foster with the local authority to be part of the community in which we live. We've found fostering with South Tyneside both supportive and rewarding. My fostering role has evolved as my experience has grown. I changed from being a baby carer to having sibling groups and then older children. And then my personal home situation changed. So I went from being a mainstream carer to a community carer, which was a new role that's been developed. And I'm grateful to the creative thinking of the fostering team that's enabled me to keep fostering, even though my situation has changed. And other new developments we've just been finding out today about, like obviously there's the Mockingbird that's been mentioned, and we've also got now a parent and child foster carer, which I think is really great addition to the team and to the authority. I think in general, it's a privilege being a foster carer. You're being part of a child's life, being part of their story, standing with them when they're going through some of the most traumatic times of their lives. And as far as recruitment and future foster carers, I think I would just encourage people to talk to other foster carers, talk to people who know about it, and to be as prepared as possible for the challenges that we'll face. Thank you.
I'm Sonia and this is my husband Dan. We've been fostering for approximately 3.5 years now. During that time we've supported 3 very successful adoptions. When children first come to us, they are extremely vulnerable, aren't they? And to build that relationship with the children and to gain their trust and have them experience what it's like to live in a normal, as you can call it, home life, and see them develop how they do, to gain that trust, and even just to go out on a day out that they may never have experienced before. Some of these children have hardly left their homes and they don't know what's out there in the big wide world on offer, and for us to be able to give them experiences is just amazing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We became part of Mockingbird approximately 2 years ago. So we became satellite carers for the first Mockingbird hub that was launched in South Tyneside. The Mockingbird carers for the first hub are fantastic. They gave us so much support and they really do help support placement stability. Through what Becky and Richard could offer to us, when South Tyneside decided to launch a further Mockingbird hubs, we thought, well, we've had such fantastic experience with this, but not only us, the children who were with us, they were able to build relationships with other safe adults that we were able to introduce them to. It then meant that they could go to another home and sleep over like they would with an auntie and uncle or a grandparent that they hadn't really had before in a safe environment. And it really helps support their adoption when they've moved on to an extremely successful adoption. So when Mockingbird Hub 4 came up, we decided we would like to offer the same opportunities and become hub carers like Becky and Richard had been so supportive with us. We wanted to be able to support other foster carers. So we now have 6 satellite families within our hub. We're in the very early days of that hub, so we're currently building relationships with the families who are involved with that. It is challenging because we've got children from age 1 right through to 16 years old, so we have to build relationships with them. work out activities that we can all go on together as a hub, so that them children can see that they've got an extended family within the fostering network, and that they're not just in with the foster family. There is other people out there in similar situations, or the children who they can share experiences with that they may not necessarily be able to do, because when they're in school, they don't want to share their experiences with friends. They want to be able to share their experiences with other children who've had them difficulties. So launching Hub 4 to us has been amazing, and the support that we receive from Mockingbird's been fantastic. And obviously for South Tyneside to take on Mockingbird and decide that this is the way forward is just absolutely amazing. The support we receive from the fostering service is fantastic again. Even out of hours, there's somebody on the end of the phone who can answer questions for us if we just need to, if something's happened in the home and we need a bit of support or just a bit of advice, we ring out of hours and there's somebody there all the time. But again, going back to Mockingbird, within that constellation, if we need a little bit of advice, we don't have to ring the hub carer. You can ring somebody else in your constellation who may have had experience of what you're going through, and they can offer you a bit of advice, or you can just go around to them for a cup of coffee just to sound off. It's somebody who you can't do that with friends or family because the information's confidential. It's the child's story. You can't share that with anybody who's outside of fostering. So having people that you can share that with is just amazing. We've attended a meeting today with South Tyneside, and they've explained to us new developments that are happening. They really listen to what the foster care is saying. If we come up with an idea that we think may work, we can take that to the fostering service and they'll listen to what we say and try and be creative with the thinking. And something that's been introduced today that we think is amazing is support that foster carers can go to that wasn't there before. So we're really excited about that being launched today. For anybody who's thinking about becoming a foster carer, we would just say, go to an event, go to an event that's fostering a holding, because until you've spoke to somebody about it, you don't know if it's for you, and you might just need to attend an event, speak to another foster carer who can say, yeah, go for it, because it's the most rewarding. I don't like calling it a job because it doesn't feel like a job. It's the most rewarding role that we've ever had. Seeing how all of the children develop, how relationships with children within Mockingbird develop is just fantastic. Don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
There's not really a lot I can add to that. I mean, the Mockingbird program, from my perspective, was fantastic because as a working foster carer as well, I was having very little opportunity to meet up with other foster carers, but having the Mockingbird group was really good. It opened things up for me to actually have chats with other people within the fostering network. And I think Mockingbird has helped actually retain some foster carers who may have possibly been wavering, because you've got a lot of support without having to go to your fostering officers for it. So yeah, it's been really, really good. And I've seen real benefits personally and within the group of people that we've been involved with.
Well, thank you very, very much for the insight that you've given there, the three people. And we know about the fostering service, you know, as councillors, we have reports on it. And Councillor Ellison, you're going to move this report, but do you want your guests to go now, or want them to wait until it's moved? Councillor Dixon.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Can I just say a huge thank you to Sandra, Sonia and Dan for coming along tonight and sharing your experience being foster carers. But most importantly, can I just say a huge thank you for what you do supporting our children in this borough. On behalf of the council, thank you.
So just for the formalities, Councillor Ellison, are you moving this report?
Yes, move the report, Chair.
Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Are there any questions, or does any member wish to speak to the report? Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This subject is very close to my heart, as I was a foster parent as well. And congratulations to you all for a fantastic job. over the years. When I was there, the staff were very friendly, professional. As foster carers, we would attend monthly meetings with staff and parents. The overwhelming gripe from parents and everybody was not being able to contact, staff and discuss issues that the child had at the time. The staff shared the biggest problem where they were overworked due to a high turnover of staff, maybe from burnout or lack of staff or too many cases. When I read this report, you've answered most of my questions, especially 2.5, the implementation of the Mockingbird model aims to reduce placement breakdown, increase recruitment and the retention of foster carers, and most importantly, after a safe and stable environment for our children and young people. So I wondered if children and youth social workers and equally important support staff had been asked for their views anywhere in the programme. And my second question, have we any carer stats as to the Mockingbird training event, learning event in previous months? Thank you.
Councillor Ellison.
Thanks, Chair. Mr. Mayor, I believe that staff are involved in the process, so I believe they are consulted in an integral part in the whole development of the Mockingbird model. In terms of the specific data that you've asked, I'll prepare that and then answer for you separately if that's okay. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for the report, Councillor Ellison. I'm sure everyone in the chamber today is supportive of the Mockingbird model. Not only here, Ofsted in their report in December, and after December's inspection, focused on our council's vision for our fostering service around Mockingbird. And thank you to the speakers. It's appreciated for everything you do, as was mentioned by the leader. But unfortunately, I'm going to move on to the harshness of politics now. Fortunately, might bore you, but it doesn't detract in any way from your efforts. Thank you. Unfortunately, in that same Ofsted report that I've just mentioned, there were some seriously concerning issues highlighted by Ofsted that are directly relevant to the report that's just been presented today. In particular, in the Ofsted report, whilst noting there is no mention in today's report of the Ofsted findings or recommendations, it was stated by Ofsted in respect of the Mockingbird constellations in South Tyneside that I will quote directly on. There is a lack of management oversight and scrutiny in key areas across this service. Any update on this concern from Ofsted would be appreciated. My understanding is oversight, strategic leadership, and challenges to the Director for Children's Services is a legislative political responsibility that falls under lead member. This concern from Ofsted on oversight, strategic leadership, and challenge to the Director of Children's Services from the lead member in relation to our children in care was a significant failing in the Ofsted findings in December, which ultimately led to our children's services being downgraded to inadequate. As mentioned, I think everyone here is supportive of the Mockingbird model, but directly linked to the report today and our children in care are the findings by Ofsted in December. For balance and openness, it needs to be mentioned that Ofsted found, and I'll quote, there has been a deterioration in the strategic oversight and understanding of how social work practice has affected children's experiences. A lack of strategic planning has led to significant numbers of our children being placed in unregistered children's homes. Serious shortfalls in the experience children who are living in homes that do not meet their needs and that are operating without sufficient management oversight. There has been insufficient challenge to the Director of Children's Services within the local authority to what has become established practice. Senior leaders have not ensured that effective management oversight is in place across all service areas. And this has had a negative impact on quality of frontline social work practice and on children's experiences. The South Tyneside corporate parenting strategy, until the time of the Ofsted inspections in December, had not been adequately cited on the risks and vulnerabilities of children placed in staffed houses.
The Councillor Thompson, are you just about finished? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Thompson, we're talking about fostering here, and I know exactly where. Yeah. Yes, I know it is, and I've given you. You've actually went over your time. I've let you go over your time. So can you just sit down, please? And I'll ask if you just sit down, please, and I'll. Yeah. Yeah. What's the question? No. Councillor Ellison, will you answer the councillor, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't propose to go through every single point that Councillor Thompson's raised today, but I will say that the improvement board's been overseeing the whole process of improvement, the improvement journey, and there's been real strides already made within that time frame. You'll note from the report, having read it as well, that there was a recognition from Ofsted that there was political leadership and leadership of the council that acted very quickly upon the point of receiving that information, that there were the concerns around the service. So I'd hope that would give you a level of reassurance that we have reacted and we are doing the right things for the children and young people that we have in our care, and actually the responsibility for as well. I think I just want to put on record just a thanks to the staff team, specifically within Children's Services, who do a really positive job day in, day out. And where we have got failings and have got findings there within the Ofsted report, I want to reassure the whole chamber and everybody else that we are taking it really seriously and we've reacted very quickly to try and change that. And I've been reassured through conversations that we've had with the Director of Children's Services and other very senior people from the DFE that we are making real strides towards progress. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ellison, for your report. The changes to children's services highlighted in your report seem to be a step in the right direction from our previous news of our abysmal Ofsted report. And I'm glad you're now putting the welfare of South Tyneside children at the forefront and recognising our statutory duty to support and protect young people in our care system by addressing some of Ofsted's concerns. However, we haven't arrived here today by chance, and under better circumstances, it is the accumulation of a damning Ofsted report that rated this council inadequate and highlighted serious failures which have resulted in children's welfare not being safeguarded or promoted. And this report and changes made only go some way in mending the tarnished name of South Tyneside Children's Services. There's a lot of work to do in winning back the public trust and reputation we once had. To that end, I'm also of the belief that some accountability is needed. I haven't seen any political accountability from the lead member of Children's Services for this damning Ofsted report that highlighted a lack of oversight. Ultimately, This oversight for children's services rests with the lead member for children's services. The book, as they say, stops with you. I cannot see us moving forward as a council on this until this happens. We are simply burying our heads in the sand and hoping people will forget it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brun. Councillor Dixon.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I've already thanked our guests for coming along this evening, and I have to say I'm extremely disappointed that this has been brought up in this meeting when certain elected members were very involved last December when we found out about the Ofsted findings. This council acted and responded immediately following the inspection and the draft feedback that we received. I've already mentioned my apologies. This is an extremely positive report, and for an elected member to say about putting children first, this council puts children, puts adults, puts families at the very forefront of what we are wanting to do. Don't frown, Councillor Thompson. I've given you respect, and I would hope that you would give me so. The Ofsted rating has nothing at all to do with this report, Councillor Thompson, and I'm very disappointed that you find this evening the opportunity to pick up something and try and grandstand on a political... Councillor Thompson, do you mind? I didn't speak when you were speaking, so please give me the opportunity. This is a positive report on our fostering service, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Ellison has already moved it, and Mr. Mayor, can we move progress?
Yes, thanks for that, Councillor Dixon. Just one quick comment from me, and that's just to say again a great big thank you to the fosterers, because having been involved with that in previous committees before I became the mayor, I really understand where you're coming from, and to hear such a positive message tonight, and from such a positive service, and I'm glad you can smile, because I like to smile as well, and we should be taking, great delight in appreciating what you've done tonight. So thank you very much for coming along. I'm just going to get the official business out of the way on this particular item, and I think it's wrong to say free to leave because it's a free country, but if you wish to leave, go. I'm sure that you may want to stay and hear some absolutely fantastic speeches from people, but Councillor Ellison, you've moved that report. It's been seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Can we note the contents of this report and endorse the council's vision for fostering and its involvement in the creation of the North East Fostering Pathfinder as set out in paragraphs 12.1 and 12.3 of the report? Is the report noted? Are those endorsements agreed? Thank you very much. The report is noted, the endorsements agreed. Thank you very much. And also thank the guests again for your continued work in supporting the council's fostering service and the vision that we have. Thank you very much. Thank you, John. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, colleagues. Just a quick reminder, for those who may not know the rules properly. You only speak when you're invited to by the mayor. Okay? Thank you for that. Right, we're going to consider a report of the Director of Business and Resources. And it's the Treasury Management Annual Report 2022, 2023. We have to consider this report because the Director of Business and Resources is required to submit an annual report on Treasury management, the activities of the Council, in order to comply with the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy Code of Practice on Treasury Management. I will ask Councillor Bell, as lead member for Governance, Finance and Corporate Services, to move the report. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I start, can I just alert colleagues to a typo within the report, and it's at paragraph 3.3. The inflation rate is October 2022 and not 2023 as is in the report. As we know, Treasury management is the process by which the council's cash flow, investments and borrowing activities are managed. The council complies with the requirements of the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy Code of Practice on Treasury Management. The code requires full council to receive an annual report on Treasury management activity. This report covers the economic background, the movement in interest rates, and the Treasury management activities for 2022-23. Despite a challenging economic climate, the Treasury management activity for the year was delivered with a favourable variance against the original forecasts and in line with the Treasury management strategy. Council is recommended to note this report, Mr. Mayor, for information purposes. Thank you.
Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you, councillor Peacock. Does any member wish to speak to the report, or are there any questions on the report? Councillor Milburn.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's just thanks, Councillor Bell, for that report. Just a couple of points, really. First one, you run on paragraph 3.1. You've stated in this environment is considered appropriate for any long-term borrowing, which I agree with. I think that's pretty. It goes with the territory, as I say. However, 3.12, we're talking about the 59.1 million under finance. Do we have a plan for to refinance that 59.1 million pounds? Sorry, thanks.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, obviously, this council did take a conscious effort because of the interest rates, which are still extremely high. Forecasts seem to say that it's going to dip by the end of 2023. We just don't know. It's still extremely high, and therefore it isn't prudent to borrow at the interest rates they are at the moment. And yes, there are plans in place for the underfinancing. We do work, as you know, year to year. We're starting the medium-term financial plan now and have been since March for the next year. So yes, there are plans to do that. And obviously, underfinancing is something that we are very conscious of and something we work towards to try and fix, along with no long-term borrowing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the report, Councillor Bell. Here we are again, as ever. Certainly in the economic climate today, it needs to be mentioned again that this Labour group has us in a very concerning financial situation. To preempt the usual Labour group response on this situation, a situation which will have us over 790 million in debt, it needs to be said that this Labour group had us 560 million in debt under the last Labour government. This needs to be said before we get the usual Labour group rhetoric about the current government cuts being the sole reason for the situation. I've said it before and I'll say it, continue to say it. We're very close to 800 million in debt, with borrowing of 650 million, a long-term property lease 1.6 million, plus PFI responsibilities of over 80 million. Add to this, as mentioned by Councillor Milburn, the capital underfinancing of over 59 million. That was only briefly mentioned in the report, but this is more debt to come. And when it's all added up, we get to that 800 million in debt. This overall financial situation leaves us with an annual debt repayment of around 22 million, or what we could do with 22 million each year. Maybe even have the grass cut regular across the borough. The financial regulators, SIPFA, have warned us about our debt levels. Is the Labour group listening? Because saying long-term borrowing was deferred due to the increase in interest rates doesn't sound like it. Deferred doesn't mean we aren't increasing our debt level. It just means a temporary delay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm not sure if there was a question in there for councillor Bell. But, if you wish to reply, councillor
Yes,
Bell.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure there was, and it's the usual rhetoric that we get. And oh, how I wish we had a crystal ball like councillor Thompson has, so that we would know what the future held for us, but we don't. We do what we do for the residents of this borough, and we are always mindful of the CIPFA Code of Practice, our Treasury management, and we work within that framework. We do not go outside of that, and we are actually very, very prudent with the reserves that we have and the assets that we are responsible for. Councillor Thompson did actually mention the housing debt which is there, and don't forget, we have the housing portfolio within this council. There are many councils in the region that don't, and therefore their debt does not look as high as ours is because of that reason. But we have a massive housing stock which we are responsible for through South Tyneside Homes. That is all taken into consideration. And believe you me, CIPFA would be the first ones to actually come in and tell us that we were doing something drastically wrong with our finances, and they haven't. So we are moving forward, as we always will do, with our Treasury management and our capital programme for the people of this borough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I find it incredible that Councillor Thompson, once leader of the opposition, could not put an alternative budget forward when we have our budget planning. I think it's quite, playing to the cameras, Councillor Thompson, when you give off all of the figures. We're fighting a battle here to survive, all of us. And I think we do very well as a council. But I think you need to bear that in mind, Councillor Thompson. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that report, councillor Bell. Thank you, Chair. At the end of the report, it says there's no sustainability implications, but the council is lending to banks. Many of these banks invest massively in fossil fuels, and some are actually increasing their investment in fossil fuels. This investment is driving climate change. Now, already at 1.2 degrees rise in global temperatures, we're seeing record temperatures, droughts, floods, wildfires, severe storms, melting ice caps and rising sea levels. I'm sure we've all seen on the news recently across the globe what's happening. Now, scientists are telling us that this is just the start. It's happening far faster than expected, and there's far worse to come as temperatures rise inexorably to 1.5 and possibly 2 degrees centigrade, unless we act promptly to stop this happening. This might actually induce some tipping points, which will make the effects ramp up even more. Now, financial institutions such as banks seem to be oblivious to this. Hence, they are investing massively in fossil fuels. This may be explained by the climate risk assessment models that they use. Recent reports have shown that they are massively underestimating the effects of climate change on the financial systems. Financial risk assessments fail to take into account tipping points and precipitation. They're very simple. So we need to be looking at what these models are being used and how by banks. Climate scientists have not had an overview or input to these risk assessments, incredibly. Hence, with the projected global warming of 4 degrees centigrade, the financial risk assessments predict a 5 to 10% global GDP reduction. In other words, pretty much business as usual. But the climate scientists predict a climate change disaster with a 100% reduction in global domestic product. So who's going to be right on history? Well, one of the authors is Professor Steve Keen. He's an economist who actually was one of the few that predicted the 2008 financial crash. He spoke out then against the mainstream of economists and is now doing it again in respect to climate change. So who should we listen to? Now, David Attenborough has said it's crazy for banks and pension funds to invest in fossil fuels. That climate change is happening faster, time's running out before the tipping points are reached, and so there's a small window of opportunity to act. And we should not be joining in this madness by lending to institutions to invest in fossil fuels. Banks should be vetted to ensure that this is not happening and that have a clear pathway to stop and reach zero carbon in good time.
Okay, we've had a good debate on this one. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Bell. Just to come back on one quick thing that Councillor he had said was about the opposition councillor members not putting a budget in. As it's been said for months and months now, if we could come across with Councillor Bell and the leader and the 151 officer and have a look at the finances ourselves, because we've seen how much money went missing in the past under the last leadership, and maybe we could get something sorted out and put a budget there. Thank you.
Okay, councillors asked to note the contents of the report. Is that duly noted? Agreed. Thank you, colleagues. The next item of business is to consider a report of the Director of Governance and Corporate Affairs to appoint current vacant positions on our community area forums. I will ask Councillor Bell, you're busy tonight, as lead member for Governance, Finance and Corporate Service, to move the report. Councillor Bell.
Family friend of Julie Valenti was mentioned in this for the issue with water, Mr. Valenti and family as well.
But no pecuniary interest or personal interest. Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are currently 7 vacancies across all of the CAFs for the community representatives, and 2 individuals have expressed an interest as a voluntary sector community rep for the East Shields and Whitburn CAF and as a business sector community rep for the Hebburn CAF. Members of the Constitution Committee have been provided with the information about each proposed representative and have approved the matter going forward to full council for approval. This is because it's deemed unreasonable to wait until the next annual meeting of council to deal with such constitutional matters. June Valente, a resident of Whitburn, with volunteering links to Inspire South Tyneside and the Street Angels, is the proposed voluntary sector community rep for East Shields and Whitburn, and Siobhan Duggan, a local business owner in Station Road, Hebburn, is the proposed business sector community rep for Hebburn. Council is therefore recommended to confirm these appointments with immediate effect. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak on this report, ask questions? Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Bell, for your report. I'm all for encouraging more local residents to speak in the community area forums. So extending this by way of an appointment to community bodies is welcomed by me. But while I support this idea, I would be guarded, as it could potentially see this system being abused, where positions are appointed on political tribalism and proper vetting being waived in favour of political connections, to bolster, say, a party that's losing seats and wants to put out their presence within a CAF. I think this report will be better received if the mechanism for preventing this and the vetting procedures are better explained to members. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The appointments are purely voluntary. They're not political in any way, shape or form. And obviously the constitution of the council and the remit of the Constitution Committee is actually well placed and well put out for councillors to look through as to how we appoint these. And rest assured, we are working hard to try and fill the other vacancies because some of them have been open for quite some time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just really to add a little bit of information that this isn't anything new. This has been in place for an extremely long time within the structure of the community area forums. At one point in time, most of those posts were actually filled and well supported by the officers who gave advice to those participants as to what their role entailed. And just again, a point of information, they are not voting roles. Those people don't have a voting right, and therefore there is no danger of undue influence. And I think it's very wrong of us to either assume, presume, or accuse anybody of political bias when they're willing to give their time voluntarily from otherwise very busy lives, often in a business context. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Council's asked to note the contents of the report and to agree the following CAF community representatives with immediate effect. So June Valente is community representative, third sector on the Shields and Whitburn CAF, and Siobhan Duggan is the community representative, business sector on Hebden CAF. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you, colleagues. The next item of business is to consider a report of the Director of Governance and Corporate Affairs to update the Council on the work of the Poverty Group and on the Partnership's cost of living response. I'm going to ask Councillor Paul Dean as lead member for the voluntary sector, partnerships and equalities to move the report. Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is my pleasure and privilege to introduce this report to full council, one that covers such a vital subject. This report describes the work that we as the council, hand in hand with our key partners in the public, private and voluntary and community sectors, have done to help our residents through the ongoing cost of living crisis over the past year. I would like to firstly thank my colleague Councillor Barclay for all her work on this agenda and the fantastic cost of living summit held in October last year. I would also like to pay a tribute to the leadership shown by Councillor Dixon, which has helped ensure the borough is at the forefront of efforts to respond to the crisis and has been recognised for this nationally, with the council sharing best practice with other councils across the country. The impact of persistently high inflation, something which we have not seen since the early 1990s, has had significant consequences for many of our residents. This has been particularly so for residents who were just about managing and those just above the eligibility threshold for key benefits such as pension credit and free school meals. We have seen food and energy prices in particular at levels that have had significantly squeezed household budgets. This has led to increase in food bank usage, rise in requests for support through our welfare support team, and significant demand on vital support organisations run by partners such as Citizens Advice and Age Concern. I would like to put on record my thanks to all those partners, organisations across the borough, from our amazing schools and NHS to our fantastic voluntary sector, for everything they have done and are doing to help support our residents through this really difficult time. Together, we have achieved a lot as a borough over the last year, and we have strengthened and increased this work further over the past 6 months since we last updated full council. This includes a regular cost of living survey so that we know what the key issues are, increasing access to services through an online platform to share information with partners, establishing a network of warm spaces across libraries, churches, cafes, community associations, and many more, the vast majority of whom are now continuing as welcoming places. Boosting crisis funding for the most at risk, providing school uniform support and vouchers during school holidays, as well as providing holiday and food provision. Helping residents to maximise the benefits they are entitled to, boosting the capacity of the welfare support team to help local people, and focusing on the dedicated push on pension credit take-up. Financial support to food banks, rolling out community shops with the second such shop now open in Tyne Dock, and helping the establishment of the Key to Life community food bus, which is now rolling out across the borough. Also close working with schools, businesses through the South Tyneside Pledge and via frontline council services such as family hubs. We know these steps are making a real difference. We know, for example, that many people using the welcome room spaces over the summer have done so for social reasons, as rising prices make it more difficult for people to pay for transport to visit friends and family or take part in social activities. While it is difficult to fully assess the impact of the partnership's work so far, more than 400 people a month are using the welcome room spaces. The council's cost of living web pages have had over 30,000 hits, and more than 5,000 low-income pensioners have received additional financial support. Over £7.5 million and £5 million respectively in benefits was secured for residents by the Citizens Advice and Welfare Support Teams. 9,000 people were supported by just one of the food banks in the borough. 18,400 households were helped through the council tax support scheme, while 9,000 children received food vouchers over the holiday last year, and thousands of children were supported through school uniform vouchers. While the majority of the levers to tackle poverty are in the control of the national government, our focus is now shifting to longer-term measures to tackle poverty and inequality. Amongst the range of next steps, we will continue to listen by holding another anti-poverty summit with partners this month, which will include national speakers and shape an anti-poverty strategy. This strategy, working closely with partners, will look at the interventions which can help to reduce rates of poverty in South Tyneside, and will ensure we can relay these messages into the new North East Mayoral Combined Authority. We will also facilitate a Poverty Truth Commission to ensure the voice of residents is at the centre of this work. We will evaluate what we have done to build on what works, including our social navigator and healthy homes pilot projects, and have already started planning for the winter. This means engaging closely with NHS and voluntary sector colleagues on how to equip frontline services such as GPs, pharmacists, and volunteers with the information they need to signpost people to support. We will also work closely with the NHS on the winter flu vaccine campaign and ensuring cost of living information is shared at the same time. We will also take action around fuel poverty with a new strategy and action plan. We will utilise and support our welcome room places and our family hubs to offer support to residents and help those at risk of homelessness, particularly through the new tenancy support team in South Tyneside Homes. We will continue to work closely with our food banks, look at how to ensure long-term sustainability around food through a new food partnership, and exploring potential options around free school meal provision. Crucially, we will continue to relay key messages to our residents on where support is available through dedicated directories and articles in the residents' newsletter. We will also continue to lobby government.
Have we got much more to go here? Is there much more to go?
No, I'm just winding up, Mr. Mayor. We will also continue to lobby the government for policy change, working closely with our MPs, consult on changes to our council tax support scheme, examine the issue of digital poverty, rollout plans around period poverty and dignity. To help us all this, we will bolster office capacity to help coordinate this vital work. I'm sure colleagues would want to join with me in welcoming this report and thanking teams across the council and our partners for all their hard work as we tackle the issue of poverty and inequality together to boost financial security targets, support to make things fairer and deliver our goal, which is our South Tyneside, a place where people live healthy, happy and fulfilled lives.
Thanks for that, Councillor Dean. Is that seconded? Thank you. Does any member wish to speak the report, or is there any questions on it? Okay, Councillor Dixon.
Yes, just one comment. First of all, Mr. Mayor, before obviously the questions come in, there is just one point I'd like to point out under the recommendations of 12.1. It actually states that Cabinet notes and endorses, Mr. Mayor. It needs to say the council, not Cabinet, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Got that corrected. Councillor Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the report. And I know this is something that's close to all of us as elected representatives. We see residents all the time and hear from residents all the time who are at the sharp end of the cost of living crisis. And I know you mentioned in your opening speech as mayor how much this is the key issue for you. And it is heartwarming to hear the stories of amazing work that goes on in our communities. And I don't want to take anything away from that, but at the same time, it's shameful that we're in the position we are in, where, you know, in 2023, there are children going to school with no food in their bellies. There's people that can't afford to heat their homes. You know, we're relying on food banks. People in working full time are relying on food banks. And living in almost Dickensian times, and it's because of inequality. You know, there's wealth out there. It's just the way it's distributed is vastly unfair at the moment. And of course, this time last year, we already knew things were bad. And then we had a disastrous mini budget, which saw the pound fall to its lowest rate against the dollar in history, interest rates rocket, and the cost of a mortgage pushed above 6%. And while there are obviously other external factors going on, it's worth pointing out that there are catastrophic impacts of reckless, ideologically driven decisions that are taken in Westminster that affect people in our neighbourhoods and in our streets. So I applaud all of the work that's going on. I know we've got the summit coming up on Monday, Cost of Living Summit, and I'm sure that'll be very productive and give us some further guidance on what we need to do to meet the needs of the residents. I just wanted to pick up on one point in the report, which is in paragraph 2.6, and it mentions there, and this is an eye-watering figure, Citizens Advice, who I know you mentioned, reported a 378% increase in clients seeking advice for a financial crisis in 2022-23 compared to 2020-2021. So 378% increase. And colleagues may have seen reports from Citizens Advice showing that the single biggest debt issue that they deal with is council tax debt arrears. And I know when we had the discussion about setting council tax rates, that was inquired about, and we heard about the support that's available, and large numbers of people do get assistance with council tax. But of course, residents have seen council tax rise again this year. And there just seems to be a bit of a disparity there. If we've got that issue and we know about it, and we know that we're doing our best to put support in place, but at the same time, that's the biggest issue people are going to Citizens Advice with, there's maybe just a slight disconnect there. And I think we need to do better with our comms and making sure people know what the support is and know they need to, you know, access it sooner rather than later. And so we just do the best for people that are really struggling and suffering at this time. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Francis. Councillor Hunley.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. I don't think we could get many questions out of it, considering you covered almost everything I could possibly think of. But I would just like to say that we had a meeting with South Tyneside Homes, and the roadshows are starting from next week, I believe, all across the borough, and there will be information going out. So please signpost all of your residents to it, because the support out there is amazing. South Tyneside Homes have brought in over £2 million worth of welfare to people in this borough by actually being signposted to the right places. So please tell anybody out there that's where they need to go, or contact us as members, and I'm sure we can signpost them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to declare an interest on 3.17 because I'm on the board of Women's Health in South Tyneside. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just correct myself? For the purposes of this report, the declaration I made is non-pecuniary for the purposes of this report. And that was in relation to the community bus, which I'm sure if you've seen it, it's a very impressive vehicle indeed. And I would urge everybody to get on. And if you look at I was talking to the person that, the main person that looks after it, the usage seems to be really very, very popular indeed in certain areas of South Shields for sure. But really, I just wanted to say another interest declaration, citizens' advice. I'm on the Board of Trustees as well, and certainly the figures that are being quoted by Councillor Dean. It's worrying, and it's impressive in equal measures. It's impressive that that amount of work is being done, but it's worrying that that amount of work is actually necessary. And I think, you know, building on what the other councillors just said there, Councillor Francis, really the job in hand here is to stop the need for all of this. So I'm delighted that the council's strategic focus is now shifting to prevention rather than dealing with the fallout of what's happening in the field of community poverty. And I just would like to pay tribute to all of the volunteers that support all of these projects, and all of the members of the public who donate to the food banks. I know there's a particular issue with the actual supply of food to the food banks on a regular basis. So please, if you can support and spare anything, please donate to the food banks. Thank you.
Members are asked to. Councillor Dixon.
Yes. Just very briefly, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, Councillor Francis, I'm having a senior moment there. Apologies. Councillor Francis and Councillor Huntley have already touched upon the citizens' advice and also the welfare support that is out there. And I think it's about us as elected members getting the messages out there to say these people are here to support. But we have touched upon the Poverty Summit on Monday. During the day, there is a number of organisations who will be in attendance, but in the evening, residents are having the opportunity to come along as well. So we'll be listening to some residents as well, which is what we've always said. The residents and the people and the children of this borough are very much at the forefront, and we will listen to what the residents have got to say, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Dixon. Members are asked to note the content of the report. Is the report noted? Thank you. The next item of business is to consider a report of the Director of Governance and Corporate Affairs regarding civic and mayoral hospitality. I will ask Councillor Bell as lead member for Governance, Finance and Corporate Services to move the report. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This annual report is presented to Council today as required by the recent changes we agreed to the allowances scheme included in the Council's constitution. This is the first time we have presented this report and is part of our ongoing and continuing approach to strengthening transparency across the Council. This is a proactive approach and one that we agreed to as a whole Council when we approved Council values, our vision for South Tyneside and our Council strategy. This report, therefore, is one that represents the Council as a whole. Whilst I presented as Cabinet Member for Governance, Finance and Corporate Services, this report relates to spend that we make collectively as a Borough Council, particularly in respect of events we hold to celebrate with a wide range of people in our communities. As the report outlines, there are a range of events and activities to mark and celebrate community pride. These events are not to be confused with spend incurred when an incumbent mayor invites groups or individuals to enjoy hospitality in the town hall. This is a relatively small amount as outlined in the report. Each year, the elected mayor hosts visits to the town hall and the parlour, particularly for community groups, young people and other groups or individuals. These activities are hugely valued by those who attend, typically with the purpose of the mayor saying thank you as the borough's first citizen for the visitors' contribution to our community, our place and our South Tyneside. We want to proactively place this information into the public domain so that it can be, quite rightly, subject to public scrutiny. As a council, we have a long-standing record of celebrating our communities, saying thank you and placing on record for future generations the contribution of those who have committed their time is incredibly important. From Freedom of the Borough commemorations to annual Remembrance Sunday, we rightly celebrate, recognise and remember those who have given so much for the people and place of South Tyneside. It's also important to note that over the last year, over 1,500 people of South Tyneside were included in these celebrations. Paragraph 3.4 refers to community-wide hospitality, with events such as Remembrance Day, Anzac Day, and Mayoress at Home, which are open to all, from veterans to cadets, young people to older people, school groups to history groups, charities, sports organisations, as well as any individual resident who wants to come along to these public events. Of course, there are other events that we can't open to all. We are limited to numbers for other events, which are still in place for our communities. These are described in the report as directly invited hospitality. The total amount spent on hospitality on promoting our borough and recognising civic pride is shown in the report. When our communities step forward to play a part in civic life, it is only right that we aim to recognise them in some small way. Offering hospitality through a range of events is one of many ways that we do that. Council are asked to note the information contained in this report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Is that report seconded? Councillor Best, thank you. Are there any questions or does any member wish to speak to the report? Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the report. I just have a couple of comments to make. To receive the Freedom of the Borough or any accolade is a rare and wonderful gift in itself for any worthy and deserving causes. Have we asked the people receiving these awards if we could reduce the catering and instead encourage those attending to make a donation to a charity of their cause, of their choice? In the past, the council have always been generous to all guests and their causes, but times have changed. This has not been mean, but if you remember the last item we discussed, our residents are worrying about how to pay their bills. We should show some solidarity and some understanding. I have read comments on social media and in the streets. The council don't care as long as they enjoy push food and wine in their ivory tower. I mean, we know this is ridiculous, but that's their perception. And they don't care about the people who voted them in. Let's move with the times and support our residents in this small way. In these days of austerity, it seems more appropriate that the guests pay for the bar tab themselves. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think what we've got to remember here is that Freedom of the Borough is an exceptional event. The honoree joins a select few who are remembered for the history books for their exceptional contribution to South Tyneside. Whilst the cost may look high in comparison to other events we host, it must be noted that this is an event of significant importance. And whilst we have seen 3 honours of this nature in relatively close succession, it is not an event that we'd normally hold every year. I understand what is being said. However, I think this is the thoughts of a minority and certainly not from the majority of the people in South Tyneside. As I said, this is an exceptional event. It's something that doesn't happen quite often as it has this time, and we will take everything on board that's been said. However, it is the highest honour this council can endorse on someone, and I'm sure that you wouldn't want us to penny pinch when it comes down to that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I certainly welcome the fact that this report is coming to Borough Council and the steps that are being made to try and you know, be as open and transparent as we can. And, you know, I think it's important that this item is heard in these meetings accessible to the public. And it says in the report that it hasn't been possible for this past year, to give a precise spend for leader and cabinet hospitality, but it's expected that that could be made in future. And again, that's something I would support. Just in terms of not to get bogged down in that one thing, but the freedom of the borough thing, I totally take the point that was made by the mayor in opening this item and talking about the, you know, the need to thank people of the borough and show respect, and when you're hosting somebody and all that. I totally accept all of that. All I would say is when we as elected councillors are attending those events, I would repeat what I said when we first discussed this for the freedom of the borough. It would be good if there was a mechanism where we could pay our own way. I'm not expecting that guests of somebody who's being honoured would do that, but I think we as councillors maybe could do that. And then secondly, while I personally enjoy a drink on occasion, and this is a personal view, I don't think there's necessarily a need to provide complimentary alcohol. And I'm not sure I ever thought the day would come where I quoted Councillor Robertson, so I wish he was here to hear it. But I remember him once saying he wasn't calling for an alcohol-free council, but certainly not a free alcohol council. And so I think that's maybe something that maybe ought to be examined. Couple of questions, and you sort of touched on one of these already, Councillor Bell. First one is, when we consult residents on the budget, which I know we do, there's a process that takes place every year. Do we ever get any feedback on hospitality spend as part of that consultation process? And then the second thing, we know that from this report that the total spending for last year was around 22,000. And when I looked in the midterm financial plan from February's budget meeting, I couldn't find it listed as a specific line in the budget in terms of how much we're expecting to spend on hospitality in the year ahead, or sorry, in the current year. So I was just wondering if it's possible to get those figures at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, obviously, take all of that on board, Councillor Francis, but I think we've got to put into context that the amount of spend on alcohol is relatively low. We have a procurement framework which is in place to reduce the costs and a rolling stock of alcohol and non-alcoholic drinks. So we're not able to actually split that down or to give a figure, one versus the other, because we do this to keep costs low, and that is how it's done. I mean, obviously we can look at it, but we can't quantify 100% what we spend on alcohol and what we spend on non-alcoholic drinks. Obviously within the budget, I don't recollect anything coming back or any comments about hospitality, but I can check that for you. And obviously I will look into the budget because I'm sure it is actually held under a collective budget heading, but I will check that and get that to you, Councillor Francis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome the report, and thank you to all of the work that's gone in behind it. I'd just like to point out, because I know members of the public show a great deal of interest in these kind of matters, that the events that are outlined here are not political events. And to my understanding, there's nothing preventing elected members from attending and participating in these events without needing to partake of hospitality. Some of us actually do that, and you know, we're all free to do that and make those decisions. Then you're not mutually exclusive. If you want to come along, walk along Ocean Road, participate in that part of the festival. This is about recognising, as Councillor Bell's actually said, recognising, celebrating people who've made a difference, including veterans in Remembrance Sunday and some of the armed forces events that are listed here. So I would just encourage people to participate for civic reasons. And then if you have RSVP'd to a civic hospitality invitation, you'll be costed for. But if you choose not to do that, then it doesn't get built into the costs, and there'll not be any money wasted if you choose not to participate. In terms of freedom of the borough, my understanding is that it's actually the recipient of the freedom of the borough who helps to put together the guest list. And I think, again, that's perhaps something that people aren't aware of. And again, that's recognition of that person, making sure that it's a special day for them and in the greatest honour that this borough can give to someone. But really, the other aspect of this is it's about engagement. You know, it's quite a civilized thing if someone comes into the town hall to give them a cup of tea or, a glass of water or whatever it is they'd like. and to bring them into the town hall. Often it's the only opportunity a person might have in their lifetime. They might not have ever been in here before. So we should be encouraging, opening up the doors, creating opportunities of all different kinds, celebrations, events that happen outside and people come back afterwards for some hospitality. This is the civic hub of our borough. We'll have other town halls and civic places in the borough, but this is really the heart of democracy. And it's a way that we can bring people into the town hall, let them experience what that civic participation feels like, and hopefully it might ignite a spark that would bring them back for different purposes, perhaps attending a committee meeting or something like that. So I would just say, you know, this town hall doesn't belong to us as councillors, it belongs to the people of the borough, and providing some modest hospitality is a way of engaging people in civic life. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Best. Colleagues, councillors asked to note contents of this report in accordance, and I'm going to read what's in front of me, with the protocol on civic hospitality outlined in the council constitution, Part E, codes and protocols. Section 14, protocol on gift and hospitality for councillors and officers. You've heard the report. Is the report noted? Thank you. The next item of business is to consider a report of the Acting Director of Regeneration and Environment regarding the Sustainable South Tyneside Annual Update 2023. I will ask Councillor Ernest Gibson, Lead Member for Neighbourhoods and Climate Change, to move the report. Councillor Gibson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This report provides an annual update of the climate change strategy of Sustainable South Tyneside in support of the council target of carbon neutral by 2030. It covers a period of April 2022 to March 23. Delivering an action plan since March 23 will be covered in next year's annual report. This marks the first interim target of 25% of carbon reduction emissions from our baseline by March 2023. We have made a lot of progress to date, and I'm delighted to announce that we have achieved the first target, an interim target, in fact, and we have succeeded that to 30% by reducing carbon emissions by 5,170 tonnes. We are committed to a cross-party working, which is very important, as members in here from the opposition side sit on that working group, and it's a very important group, and members were given the chance from the cross-party working group to contribute to this document tonight, to pass comments, and we're grateful for things we have received from his in your contributions. I would like to highlight some of the key pieces of work that are being delivered across the borough in support in reduction carbon emissions. The Vaping Energy Centre in Jarrow is close to completion, and this will support 7 buildings within Jarrow with low carbon heating. It is anticipated this will have a saving of 700 tonnes of carbon per year. Hebburn Renewable Energy Centre is another initiative scheme which supplies low carbon heat to 3 buildings. The scheme has required a change in focus as a result of ground stability, which issues could not have been foreseen. Unfortunately, this meant the boreholes could not be completed. However, the scheme has continued to use air source pumps. This means the nearby properties will still benefit from renewable energy, and opposed to the traditional way of heating, the output in the terms of carbon emissions will remain the same. And this will save 500 tonnes of carbon emissions per year. Holborn Energy Centre will be the largest plant of our heating system. And this was established, and will have a carbon saving of 2,500 tonnes per year once completed. We also recognise the importance of our natural environment in helping reduce the impact of climate change. In March 2023, the Council declared an economic emergency, recognising the national and global evidence that we need to reverse the decline in biodiversity and nature. Tree planting is an important approach of the Council's climate change. The Council will continue to focus on tree planting, striving towards planting 3,000 trees per year. In 2022-23, the Council planted a total of 4,201 trees. Although the North East Community Forest Partnership
we will continue to access the funding for tree planting. We know we have done a lot and we have achieved a lot, but climate change is imperative. Our coastal improvement projects play a key role in the borough, adapting changes to climate. Recently, we completed the A13 Coast Road alignment. This has increased our lifespan of 50 years of the coast road, which was affected by coastal erosion. Strongest Shores project has now been launched. It aims to improve the understanding and the benefits of marine habitat to help to address coastal erosion, flood risk, climate change and biodiversity, managing nature-based solutions. This will include restoration of kelp, oyster beds, seagrass across the sites of South Tyneside and the northeast coast. The Ocean Recovery Declaration committed the Council to consider ocean recovery decision policy making to recover the health of our ocean. Action has already been undertaken to protect through the partnership projects of Seascape, Stronger Shores and the Council's National Road as lead authority of the LGA Coastal SIG. Schools are fundamental in this approach, the threat we are facing to the planet, as they provide a place for education and community engagement. Following the launch of the school's climate toolkit in 2021, the Council has continued to work to raise awareness of climate change. Those elected members in the room tonight who are school governors, I hope you take the opportunity of collecting a toolkit, and taking it to your schools and raising concerns about the environment so the children can take all this on board. In conclusion to these are the examples demonstrated a clear ongoing commitment to tackle climate change. The first interim target has been met. We should celebrate the work which we have achieved. A great deal of work is still to do to achieve our 2025 and overall 2030 target of carbon neutral. So what's next? Climate change is a responsibility of us all to share, as without full engagement, we will be unable to deliver this requirement. As local leaders, we have an important role to play, addressing the impact of climate change. We must work across different sectors and facilitate, encourage and coordination and action. We'll also look at the opportunities to implement low carbon alternatives across operations, such as exploring alternative sources of fuel, such as hydrogen, to help decarbonize our fleet. Along our efforts to expand our low carbon heating infrastructure. However, this will require an increase in investment. So it's important that we continue to explore all funding opportunities. Mr. Mayor, I ask Council to note the information contained in this report in relation to emission reduction and delivery activities supporting the Council's ambition target of carbon neutral by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Is that seconded? Councillor Dawes, thank you. Are there any questions, or does any member wish to speak to the report? Just could it didn't quite catch everybody's. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I want to thank Councillor Gibson, along with other officers and members, regarding their honest intentions and hard work to improve our coastal waters and coastline. However, until we have a joined-up approach, I fear the situation will get worse on our coast, not better. At 2 planning committee meetings this year, permission was granted for a total of 211 new homes in the ward I represent. I spoke at both meetings along with Mr. Bob Latimer, who has worked tirelessly for over 2 decades on the subject of the effect of human waste, untreated sewage entering the North Sea via Whitburn Pumping Station. Factually correct information and figures provided to the planning committee, in my opinion, was simply overlooked. The fact is the sewage system is overloaded that services my ward. And that was not fully considered as per the wording in theme 9 of this report. Independent and Green councils alike voted against these developments, primarily because of the possible impact to the environment and public health. Both developments were carried due to the unanimous vote of all Labour councillors, not a whisper of a deferring decision until this serious issue, has been resolved and a path has been set. So with respect, Councillor Gibson, for your pledges of stronger shores, motion for the ocean, you appear to have convinced all opposition members, but it appears you are struggling to convince some of your Labour colleagues to consider the dreadful sewage situation when making important decisions. So I ask, are all Labour councillors committed to protect our shoreline and sea, or just some words? And if they are, what example can you give specifically to the coast where your colleagues have proactively made a decision to protect the ocean? And again, not just words. The wording in theme 9, quote, over the next 4 years, the scheme will involve restoring subtidal habitats such as kelp beds, oyster reefs and seagrass, unquote. Again, quote, the Ocean Recovery Declaration commits the Council to consider ocean recovery in its decision and policy making and do all we can to recover the health of the ocean. There's mention in theme 9 of the value of marine habitats and their wider role in adapting to climate change and biodiversity. So on the subject of biodiversity, in August this year, at the World Triathlon event held at Roker, at least 57 athletes fell ill with sickness and diarrhea. The Environment Agency reported on Wednesday, the 26th of July, 3 days before the event, 3,900 E. coli colonies per 100 millilitres of water, more than 39 times higher than typical readings the previous month. E. coli is a bacterial infection that can cause stomach pain and bloody diarrhea. With respect, Mayor, you said about the national headlines for the Great North Run. This incident created international headlines worldwide. What part of stronger shores and motion for the ocean apply here? Sewage from Clean and East Bowling is treated at Hendon Treatment Works, Sunderland, and what can't be treated goes back along the coast to Whitburn, where untreated sewage is pumped into the ocean. This is our problem as well. I believe this council has made representations to Northumbria Water following this event. If so, can Councillor Gibson report back to see what their views are? I'm also aware of the view that norovirus may have caused the illness and that the E. coli readings were outside the swim zone, but those readings are appalling. Bathing water is used by many of our residents at Roker. So can I ask, what public health warning or advice did we give our residents regarding bathing in the sea of Whitburn and Roker following these E. coli results? Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gibson, do you want to reply to that?
Yep, I'll reply, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I've got to say that the council is not responsible for the water company. The water company is its own boss, basically. It's endorsed by the Environmental Agency. Ofwat is the policeman who watches over them. The council has no lawful position in controlling water companies. That's the first of all. You mentioned the triathlon in Sunderland. That's Sunderland's council. That's not South Tyneside's council. But at the end of the day, South Tyneside Council will lobby, and we've got advocacy roles here. All councillors are lobbying for a better ocean. As in public health is mentioned, you know, we're not responsible for the regulation of sewage, but we are introducing SUDS, where you mentioned about new buildings. SUDS is sustainable drainage, which takes away that and it offsets the relevant water. It sets clean water into the ocean. It holds the sewage water back and it puts it in the appropriate place. Within South Tyneside itself, there's many Victorian sewage systems, but that's down to your local water companies, not investing in the companies, instead putting the money back in Hong Kong area. You know, 75% of the money, which is raised by Northumberland Water, goes to Hong Kong. Hutchinson Communication, the same ones who are putting these G5 masts up, who have all put petitions in about, but those are the people we're on about. The law until themselves, but we're regulating through the Environmental Agency, and by law, they are allowed to release so much sewage per year. At the end of the day, we are lobbying. We've lobbied Minister Powell. I've got a meeting with her. 6th of November, the water company's coming in. So you can put the questions to the water company. You can ask them what you want. And that's what they're here for. We had a meeting with them, and it was a very difficult meeting. They were very, say, shy in answering the questions. It was quite difficult meeting. But Whitburn, two people from Whitburn Forum come along, myself and the leader and relevant officers was there. And we did try, and we're fighting the corners of South Tyneside every minute of the day. We want a sustainable ocean. We want an ocean, a healthy ocean, because that is going to be part of our life in the near future. You know, we're going to put wind turbines at sea. It takes oysters, kelp. It's going to take CO2s up. It takes 78% of that up. We have got to fight to make the planet a better place. And that is what South Tyneside's doing. This report here has just reported what we're doing. And what was just said is we need you as citizens to come on board and support that as well.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on the when you just said something there, Councillor Gibson, about the citizens getting them on board. Not trying to be disrespectful, but listen to what you're saying. It's just what you're going to say, and we don't know actually what's going on. We've got an expert that's on my doorstep, and Bob Latimer, who's been dealing with this for over 25 years. On the 6th of November, you've just said you've got a meeting with the water company. Could we invite Mr. Latimer to come down and speak here, and once he spoke here, then the residents will see what's actually going on in the ocean, and it's not just coming from yourself. Because you know what people are like, they're going to say, the Labour have said this, the Labour have said that. But if you get an outside body that's going to come in and do this, it's going to look good for everybody, isn't it? Thank you.
The communication session on the 6th of November is for elected members, as elected members have been raising this concern and asking for it for a long time. And it's quite difficult getting the water company in. So at that point, it is elected members. And I would like to bring the leader in at this point, possible?
Yeah, there's just a couple of things actually on the report, but just coming back obviously to the meeting that was held with the Environment Agency, with Northumbria Water, with elected members, with the lead member, with officers, was actually arranged prior to any issues that went on in Sunderland. So just to make members and, you know, members in the gallery and watching, that meeting was arranged, and that meeting was arranged at the request of the Whitburn Neighbourhood Forum. So just to give a little bit of reassurance, the community forum came along, and it wasn't with Mr. Latimer, it was with another member of the forum who works very closely with Mr. Latimer, who was given sort of the opportunity to challenge both agencies. There had been a request for an inquiry from the neighbourhood forum. That has been taken away, and I know that the Environment Agency and Northumbria Water were looking at that. So just to give some reassurance, we are taking this matter extremely seriously. It did take a little while to get everybody in the room, but that meeting wasn't arranged after the triathlon. It was arranged prior, but it took a little bit of time to get everybody in the room. And I think it was really welcomed by the forum, for the forum to have their opportunity to air their opinions and be listened to. So we will be expecting some feedback coming in from both agencies in the coming weeks, but definitely on the 6th of November, everybody has the opportunity to come to this meeting as elected members to air their views, their opinions, and to challenge Northumbria Water, Mr. Mayor.
If it's relevant, yes.
Yeah, thank you. It's just when we sat here before, we've seen the ladies here from the fostering. We brought experts in for this meeting. Can we not ask Mr. Latimer to come down and explain to the next full council, if that would be possible? Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Roberts. Councillor Milne. It'll be considered, it's in the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report is welcomed, and I would like to thank Councillor Gibson and officers for their work. South Tyneside Council has now declared a climate emergency, an ecological emergency, and signed up to the UK 100 pledge. Yet, on a grassroots level, we continue to see healthy mature trees felled, mature hedgerows removed, open space built over, rivers polluted, seas pumped full of untreated waste. Current policies show all of these should be protected. The National Plan and Policy Framework sees to much of that. Since 2018, I have campaigned to protect at-risk healthy mature trees, and as a councillor, I will continue. So-called green schemes like the Hebburn and Holborn Mine Water Project require the removal of healthy mature trees and hedgerows. The report states this was for nothing, as the Hebburn project faced difficulties, so changed. Planning permission is routinely granted for environmentally damaging developments. Concerns are ignored or dismissed by members of the Plan Committee who continue to vote for them. The Council's tree and woodland policy is soon to be updated. Now is the time to strengthen it. Our mature trees need more protection. Most currently have no protection at all. This is unacceptable. The report is related to emissions reductions. Global warming is linked to an increase in levels of carbon dioxide. As trees specialise in removing carbon dioxide and converting it into oxygen, there has never been a more important time to save every single healthy mature tree in South Tyneside. The report states each year 76,000 tonnes of CO2 are stored by our town's trees, and this is released when they are felled. Trees have many more benefits from proven research that they improve our mental health, they fight against flooding, and give home to wildlife. I know many agree our streets look more appealing with mature trees. Until, as a council, we truly lead by example and build around existing trees and hedgerows, carry out sensitive management of shrubs and hedgerows instead of hard pruning around parks, etc. Only approve schemes that will not require mature trees and hedgerows to be removed, and prosecute those that fell protected trees, and further still, use foreseeable development impacts on other sites and use that to shape decisions. For example, there's 3 linked sites where it's the college, Cheetah Reed and Heart and Miners Welfare, all of which are highly likely for development, but will see huge mature tree loss. In each plan application, although separate, are intrinsically linked for many reasons, such as sports pitches. And in the case of Cheetah Reed, would likely mean that environmentally destructive tile sheds flyover will be built, leading to decimation of a designated wildlife corridor. Great North Forest mature trees would be felled. A protected triple SI site would go. Green belt could be opened up for development and negatively impact a protected grey crested new pond and the separate tile sheds pond. We have heard from foster care families tonight, yet as a council we are taking away the future of many children regarding open spaces, clean air and biodiversity. I know it's been said before, but we need to say deeds, not words. I would like it noted my serious concerns regarding the lack of protection for our town's mature trees. Is it possible to have this report deferred until the importance of keeping the town's mature trees and giving them more protection is granted? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I update the tree risk management update, and the risk policy will be looked at, and it's going to the meeting on 28th of October. So that's where it begins. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I haven't indicated that I'd like to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson, for the report, and thank all the officers involved. It's a very thorough report. Some really positive aspects to it, and it shows that we have significant reductions in council greenhouse gas emissions. The council is on its way to zero carbon by 2030. There are, however, some barriers. I think you alluded to some. One is the lack of government support and policy failure, especially on the planning front. The other is, as you said, finance. Now, several English local authorities have launched local climate bonds to raise finance for projects such as installing solar panels. Anyone can invest in these bonds and invest as little as £5 and get the financial return. This helps the council's objective to get the whole community involved in fighting climate change. I have made proposals for South Tyneside to issue such a bond, but has not as yet been accepted, despite them being approved by local government association. And it's comparable with the main source of council borrowing through the Public Works Loan Board, and whose interest rates have almost doubled, as the report previously stated. This could finance schemes like that one in Northumberland County Council, where a staff car park has had solar panels erected above car parking bays and introduced 120 EV charge points with battery storage. This powers their main building and gives them 100 to 150,000 pounds of savings each year, and also reduces their carbon budget by 250 tonnes. Could the bank money, the money that we lend to banks, not be better spent on producing a local climate bond? They would actually then be ensuring that the money is spent sustainably, provide local jobs, and reduce greenhouse gases for the council. Could I ask that the relevant committee look at local climate bonds as a means of helping our council reach zero carbon?
I'll give you a written response on that one.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to reply to Councillor Foster's comments around the planning committee and a couple of other members, or certainly one who has touched upon them. As a long-standing planning committee member, it's very, very difficult these days to refuse a planning application. We are statutorily bound to abide by the law, to abide by local policies. And you'll find that because it's a statutory committee, Labour councillors cannot be whipped. So they vote separately, they vote independently, and they vote on the evidence that they have before them. We are not simply allowed to refuse an application based on political gain. It is a very well thought out process. We simply don't put our hands up when we need to or want to refuse an application. We have to give a reason in planning terms, and that is unavoidable. It is very easy to put your hand up, but it isn't easy to give a reason for refusal. If we refuse and we don't have solid grounds, it can be taken to the planning inspectorate and they can overrule that decision, and it can cost the council a fortune. So we have to be very, very mindful as to that when we're making those commitments. I'd just like to point out as well that it was actually in Margaret Thatcher's speech in 1988 that brought in the privatisation of our water companies in 1989. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, councillors asked to Councillor Dixon.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I was just coming in about the sewage issue. Oh, does Councillor Thompson want to come in?
No. Councillor Dixon.
Right, okay. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think this report takes us well on our way to be carbon neutral by 2030. There are so many positives within this report, and I would ask members, if they get given the opportunities to visit some of these fantastic green energy schemes that we've got in this borough, I would ask them to do so. I think for me, I want to point out is Monkton Stadium in particular. The gym that we've got in there is absolutely first class. And I mean, from a regional point of view, it's very much at the forefront of the region and one of the only ones. You can even go in there and you can do your exercise, and there's you can capture the energy, and that's generated back into the grid. How many? It also tells you as well how many light bulbs you've actually lit when you're actually either on the treadmill or on the cycle. So, you know, if you get the opportunity, go and have a look at this green gym. It is absolutely superb. And then we've touched upon a number of factors, but what I would just like to point out, coming back to the Viking Energy Network in Jarrow, that, Mr. Mayor, is one of the first of its kind in the UK. So again, we, as a small borough of South Tyneside, is leading the field in what we're trying to do with sustainability, Mr. Mayor. Oh, and I'm getting a little note here about Dogger Bank. It would be remiss to mention Dogger Bank, who again is one of the, well, it is the biggest wind farm, or will be, in the UK. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm just wondering about my application to visit the Viking Centre. It's been in since January. I'll not name who's got that application, but despite reminding them, nothing yet. But thank you, Mr. for the report. Councillor Gibson, can I ask on theme 3, transportation and travel? It's mentioned a new operational model for our EV charging is being explored. The report goes on to say the work will also consider expansion of the network to meet future demands. Can you tell me if any indicative work has been done at this time to gauge future demand, or when that work might be done, so residents can see the forecasted EV coverage in their own areas? I just think a map, even if it's indicative of the growth of the network as people are transitioning, would encourage people in that direction. Did you get that last bit? I just think a map of any indicative expansion of the network would be good for residents who are considering transitioning. I just think it's something that would be good to put out there and encourage people that the infrastructure is in place. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson, they are looking at it, and by September, we were getting a report which was coming about the expansion because it has been looked at. And as you know, car charging points change as quick as mobile phones. 1 week you've got iPhone 12 and 2 weeks down the line, you've got iPhone 15. So that's how quick charging points are changing. With cars, as you know, there's about 8 different pods, plugs, what to charge the cars. So we've got to take all that into consideration as well. And it is being looked at. And last year, we've moved up from last year, we have, I think, 49 charging points, which is actually working in the town, and 13 workplace charging points.
Okay, colleagues, councillors asked to note the contents of this report in relation to the emission reductions and delivery activities supporting the target of carbon neutrality by 2030. Is the report noted? Noted. Thank you. The next item of business is to receive questions under Council Procedure Rule 8. 2 questions have been received under this rule. 1 question from a member of the public on regarding motions from a Mrs. Long, and she will receive a written response to her question within 7 days of this meeting. The second question is from a councillor regarding any initiatives which Northumbria Police have currently in place or have in place scheduled to reduce antisocial behaviour levels. Councillor Brennan, could I invite you to read out your question, which is directed to Councillor Foreman. Councillor Foreman is not present tonight, but please read your question out.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could Councillor Foreman, as a designated representative of Northumbria Police and Crime Panel, update the council on any initiatives which Northumbria Police have currently in place or scheduled to reduce antisocial behaviour levels? It has been widely reported that successful initiatives by Northumbria Police, like SAIL and SARA projects in Southwick and HALO in Hetton, have successfully reduced antisocial behaviour levels. Could Councillor Foreman inform Council on any related initiatives that may be implemented in South Tyneside? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan, and you will receive a written response within 7 days of this meeting. Both questions are printed on the council agenda, and the questions and answers provided will be added to the question book, which is open to public inspection in the reception in South Shields Town Hall. The next item of business is to deal with petitions received under Council Procedure Rule 9. 1 petition has been received under this rule. As per the council procedure rules, we won't debate the petition today, and after the petition has been presented in accordance with the process set out in the Constitution, I will move that the petition be referred to the appropriate body. Councillor Bell, Cunningham or Strike, understand you've been asked to present the petition on behalf of the petitioner.
Yeah, it's on behalf of the proprietors of West Bolton Post Office. The petition is to introduce a new no-return parking policy through trading hours of that post office. There were 228 total signatories. 181 of those reside in the borough. And I present the report to council, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. In accordance with standing orders, the petition stands referred to the Director of Regeneration and Environment as the appropriate body for further consideration. Colleagues, there were no petitions presented in the meeting of the Borough Council held in March, and therefore no updates to report from the appropriate bodies. The next item of business is to receive motions under Council Procedure Rule 10. There are 2 motions to be considered under this rule today. I will explain the procedures for motions. I will ask the proposer of the motion to move the motion. He or she may speak up to 5 minutes. I will then ask whether the motion is seconded. The seconder may speak up to 3 minutes or reserve the right to speak later in the debate. The motion will then be open to debate by members who may each speak up to 3 minutes. Any amendment must be relevant to the motion. Only one amendment will be moved and discussed at any one time. And if the motion is not carried, other amendments to the original motion may be moved. If an amendment is carried, the motion as amended takes the place of the original motion and becomes the substantive motion to which any further amendments are moved. Lots of technical language there, but I think we've been in this chamber long enough to have read the rules and the Constitution and know how to proceed. Motion 1 has been submitted by councillors Thompson, Francis, Brennan, Forster, Ford, Guy, Herbert, Kennedy, Milburn, Millen, Roberts, Robertson and Stonehouse. Councillor Thompson, please present your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've been here before, actually on several occasions now. And again today, the opposition is asking for debate and consideration of how we develop and improve public engagement, awareness and interest of what we do and show what, as a council, we can offer our communities by improving visibility of our council meetings and committees so the public can see how, why, and by who important decisions are made. Compounding the current situation is that, and this has been said before, and I'll say it again, because it's very important, in the last constitutional review, there was a significant push from the Labour group to steer change and debate away from the one meeting we do record here in full council in the chamber. Steering change and debate to our committee structures, that's fine. That's Labour's privilege by numbers to do that. But if change and debate is somewhere else, it's a consequence that full openness, transparency, and accountability follows there. So the public has full visibility of the decision-making process and they can see why decisions are being made and by who. In the hope of developing the debate on this motion, I wanted to respond to some of the points that arose from last full council on this very issue. It's been said all council meetings are already currently open to the public. Yes, but look at the numbers attending most of these meetings. You will see the typical number is unfortunately 0. The peer review team recently stated when visiting South Tyneside, and I'll quote the peer review team directly, ensuring that decisions are as transparent as possible and linked clearly to the council's evidence base. This is important for improving transparency in decision making. This peer review team recommendation highlights the importance of transparency in relation to the decision-making process. Our responsibility as a council is to improve this situation when it is reasonably practicable and affordable. Hence, the recent trial the opposition held in the town hall, a trial which was based on another authority's cost-effective approach to improving transparency and hosting their meetings. A trial which for the opposition had a one-off cost of £23.42. Additionally, concerns around implications to impacting officers' time, this is negligible. The link to the trial has been shared to all members. It's not perfect, but it works, and it's certainly practicable and affordable. Further improvements sound, add another £100. Clip-on Bluetooth microphones, issue gone. But overall, £23 is an awful long way short of the 160,000 quoted by Councillor Bell when this was debated in last full council. It's also been said, democracy isn't something you just watch, by the champion of democracy, Councillor Best, when she said it's something you need to be involved with by going in person to meetings yourself and engaging, not just watching a video recording of it. What if you can't? What if you can't physically engage? What if you're at work? What if you have commitments? And this covers many people. Keeping in mind it's our role to improve engagement. Again, a fundamental of democracy is to have as much transparency of our decision-making process that is reasonably practicable and affordable. That fundamental of transparency is best achieved in 2023 by utilizing technology to remove significant barriers. As naive as this may sound, this doesn't include quoting from a report on technology from 14 years ago. Technology has moved on a tad in that time. Hence this motion today, requesting that Cabinet simply considers the proposed solution in this motion or any other practicable and affordable solution available at this time. Certainly not replying on a report from 14 years ago, which hasn't been acted on in any way in that long 14 years. I hope everyone today can support that this motion is referred to Cabinet for consideration. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to second the motion, but reserve my right to speak later in the debate, please.
Thank you, Councillor Francis. The motion is now open to debate by members. Do any members wish to speak, question or move an amendment? Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think you will be not surprised that I am not in favour of this motion and therefore I'm against it. Because here we are yet again, as Councillor Thompson says, looking at the same old chestnut we dealt with not 2 months ago. Although there are some small changes to the motions that have been set before Council previously, the major concept remains the same: recording or live streaming Council committee meetings. However, it must be pointed out that the approach highlighted in the appendix in this motion wouldn't have been live streamed. It would have to be recorded and uplifted to YouTube afterwards. Despite the suggestion the Council does not have a stock of iPhones, we would need to arrange for around 5 to 6 iPhones to be purchased at a cost of £6,000 to £7,000 in order to service this proposal and to allow for any overlap of meetings. Not all of the meetings listed are held in Committee Room A. Some are held in the reception room due to the size of that meeting. These cannot be relocated to Committee Room A due to their membership numbers. There are some issues with regards to reception and sound quality in the reception room that may result in an echo or severe sound quality issues, as is the case with the sound system used there currently. It would also appear that this same problem occurs in Committee Room A, as the party political broadcast trial that Councillor Thompson sent to us all from that room suffered from extreme interference and loss of sound altogether in some sections of that trial, not the success we are led to believe. There would also be a staff resource issue around editing and uploading the meeting by suitably skilled officers. There would also be a need to monitor the recording throughout the meeting to check and ensure there are no issues during the meeting, as in happening right now to this meeting where we are today. This would add pressure to an already stretched resource, and we would need to make a decision as to what we would not do to allow for these additional duties. The Council does have a YouTube account for which no licence fee is required, but some work would need to be undertaken to rationalise and signpost from the Council's website. Due to previous accusations about deliberate attempts by officers to distort sound quality and remove sections of the meeting at full council, I would have concerns about the potential for further unsubstantiated accusations or claims being made against officers within democratic services, member support, press and engagement, and particularly ICT and digital. Should, for an example, a recording or sound fail for any reason, or in the case of any technical issues. At its peak for the last council meeting held in July, 41 members of the public were signed in to watch the meeting. The average view time for that meeting was just over 16 minutes. Mr. Mayor, all of these meetings are open to the public to attend should they wish to do so. There is still a considerable cost implication to this and a large drain on staff resources. I therefore ask colleagues once again to think carefully about these implications and reject this motion again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Best.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bit like Councillor Bell, I'm not going to repeat myself. We've talked this one many times over, but I know that you know that the meetings are all open, and I'm interested in terms of why community area forums and scrutiny haven't been mentioned. Councillor Thompson's just said that I did say engagement isn't watching, it's about participating. so slightly again misquoting me and changing the meaning of what I said. Participation comes in our public facing meetings, which are scrutiny and CAFs. And the other things that actually aren't on this list. So I can't see how this particular proposal actually addresses the need for people to engage in the non-executive side of the council structure and its meetings. And I would urge everybody, if they can, get along to CAFs and scrutiny to participate. But I know that Councillor Thompson likes a list, so I've got a bit of a list for you here. Can I ask you please, paragraph 3, what do you mean by normal working hours in September 2023? What do you mean by that? You know, we're being asked to vote on a motion here, so I'd like to know what that actually means. Which local authorities, please, at paragraph 4, host all of their meetings online, which again is what this motion says. I'd like to just clarify on points, paragraph 7. Are you aware that elected members can already follow committees they're not assigned to? There's nothing stopping elected members coming to those meetings. They can even record them and share them amongst colleagues if that's, you know, convenient for them to do so. What do you mean at paragraph 10 by little demand? What is that level of demand? You know, again, you can't just put things in motions and not explain them. And what mitigations would you propose? The video that we were sent was taken in a very small room with a few microphones. There was a terrible sort of a hissing noise constantly throughout the video, which I've personally found very distracting. And I'm sure if that was magnified, it would be even more distracting for members of the public. So what mitigations are you proposing to address the significant acoustic challenges of a room like the reception room? That probably, room A is probably one of the smallest rooms in the building in terms of committees. So, you know, what are your proposals, again, given that we're being asked to vote on this, for challenges to mitigate those challenges in the reception room, which is one of the rooms you're suggesting this coverage from iPhones can manage. And again, can an iPhone actually manage to capture the entirety of a huge room like the reception room? And the acoustics are mainly due to the height of the ceiling. And having worked in this building and delivered many, many events in that room, it is actually the worst room in this building for acoustic challenges. So I just really would appreciate some answers to those points, please, so that we can take this seriously. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Best. Councillor Gear.
Because some last minute amendments to the speech there, and apologies, I'm going to have to squint. I haven't got my glasses today, but I'd just like to thank Councillor Thompson and the other members who put a significant amount of time in revisiting this motion. When tabled previously to this committee, I spoke against the motion on the grounds of the eye-watering costs that were being quoted. And as mentioned in this motion, there is now a proof of concept provided to members that would provide recordings at a far more reasonable cost. As Councillor Thompson has stated himself, the solution isn't perfect, but it can be easily adapted to overcome these issues at still quite nominal costs. I would like to remind our colleagues in this room that earlier this evening, we discussed catering costs in the region of £20,000 and were generally told that that was a minimal cost. The costs here being discussed are likely just as minimal. Our existing system that we're using to record this very meeting is not perfect. We have sound interference issues there, and we still broadcast it all the same. So I wouldn't want that particular issue to be a stopgap here, because it's an issue we currently face. So without the cost barrier, this motion does have my support tonight, and I look forward to voting in favour of it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Purvis.
Thank you. It was quite rightly said, here we go again. And yet again, we have this motion brought before us. Now, I have a couple of observations to make. In the course of over 2 decades as a candidate and a councillor, never once have I been approached by a resident to say, you know, I've got this burning need to have meetings, you know, filmed so that I can watch them. I've had plenty of comments about dog muck, bins getting emptied, you name it, but never once has anybody lobbied me in Whiteley's way and asked for the meetings to be presented to the public. Now, Councillor was commenting on catering facilities. I'm sure if you ask people, they'd rather have a sticky bun than watch the meeting being filmed. So I don't think there's any great demand from the public, which is what I'm trying to say. I think this is about showboating. I think it's about grandstanding. I think it's about look at me, look at me, look at me. I don't think there's any demand from the public. I've never witnessed any demand. I suspect none of you sitting around here have ever been approached by your constituents to demand that we spend money filming it. So here we go again. Here we go again. Let's knock this back. Let's knock the showboating back. Let's kick this motion into touch. We don't want to see it anymore.
Councillor Francis, would you like us to, sorry, Councillor Roberts?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of touches on this. When we first had this meeting a couple of months ago, I think Councillor Bell said it was something about £160,000 to do this. But the only figure she's mentioned tonight was 7,000. There's nearly £150,000 difference straight away in one meeting. So I cannot see the problem of having this and streaming it over live. The only reason I can see why we don't want, we've said before, well, nearly £800 million in debt. I think the residents would love to see councillors sitting around the table and discussing why we're in this, what's put in this £800 million debt, rather than sitting hiding it. This motion is a good motion. It's going to get a lot of support, people watching it, and then they can sit and watch what councillors actually doing with the £800 million that were in debt. Thank you.
Now, Councillor Brennan, are you just indicating now that you want to speak? Right, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion has been brought back because opposition members have proven that this video recording can be done to an acceptable standard, which is both audible and visual. I know a lot of Labour councillors here have disagreed with that tonight, but I would disagree myself. I think it is of an acceptable standard. Not only is the quality good enough, some commentators believe it to be better than what we currently have in place, and there's been many faults with full council being recorded and the sound quality not being as good. This was all achieved on a smartphone. The council possess many such phones, so I don't believe any additional cost is needed. The phone was balanced on a relatively inexpensive tripod and uploaded and edited by my 10-year-old daughter using a cheap and readily available software. Just to prove a point, it can be done. The cost is minuscule, £23.42. Cost was the main issue and the main reason quoted by Councillor Bell for challenging this motion last time. And I notice we've changed our tune this time. It went for a different direction. It was cost last time, it's sound quality this time. We were told this would cost the council £160,000. In fact, this video and setup we were presenting here today would be virtually free after the initial purchase of a tripod and phone. And sound quality was mentioned. An additional cost could be purchased for Bluetooth microphones at relatively cheap cost, which would improve the sound yet again. I believe there should be no further excuses why this council can't support this motion tonight. I think anything less is a blatantly wanting to keep the public ignorant. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Francis, would you like to give your 3 minutes now?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just a few things in terms of the "here we go again" thing. Yes, we do, but there's additional new information, so I think that rebuts that argument. In terms of the nobody approaching people in Whiteley's Way, I can guarantee that no one's approached me in King Street recently asking for a, update on the proposed appointments to community area forums, or to ask about a report on the civic and mayoral hospitality, or for that matter, calling for the continued proactive enforcement of measures to prevent the use of vapes by children under the age of 18 and to promote the recycling of disposable vapes. But they're all things that we're discussing here tonight too. Accessibility is important. So people that can't attend meetings physically in person for any number of reasons should not be excluded from taking part in local democracy and seeing the decisions that are made in their name. We're not asking for a commitment here, a definite irreversible decision. We're just asking for it to be explored and considered. And I can't understand why anyone would deliberately choose to make an uninformed decision rather than gather the information, look into the possibilities, and then make a decision. The cost argument has been somewhat rebutted. And again, the solution that's been presented is just one of many possible solutions. We're just asking for this to be considered. And the only other thing I would say, and I say this regretfully really, in some of the meetings that take place that aren't in this room at Borough Council and don't have this many people in the public gallery, sometimes there's just a member of the press there, or sometimes there's nobody there. I've witnessed personally poor behaviour on numerous occasions by elected members. And I'm not singling out any particular group or party there. That's a thing across the board. And although we do sometimes see questionable behaviour in Borough Council as well, I think if people knew that what they were doing was being seen by members of the public, they would think twice about the decisions they make, but also about their conduct within meetings. And for that reason alone, I think this is worth supporting.
Councillor Thompson, as the proposer, would you like to come back in?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start on my list. Probably missed a few bits out, but I think I got most. Councillor Bell, I know you mentioned only 41 people watched it live. That would be relevant if we'd asked for live streaming, but actually it proves a point. We asked it to be recorded and hosted. How many people watched it after a few weeks? It's in the hundreds, which proves a point. There is a demand. And either way, is it not fundamentally our role to improve engagement, or do we just say nobody's interested, leave it alone? Councillor Best. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bell, one last one. I'd love to be an iPhone salesman if you came in at those sort of costs you mentioned. It's actually not the latest models that are required, and it would just be a few £100 to buy 5. But you don't know which model, so I don't know how you can shake your head and deny that. So, Councillor Best, why was the chamber not included? Because we felt it was more practical to deploy something in the committee rooms, which are easier to do. It's more complicated in here. And then ideally, once that had been established, then you could roll it out in the chamber. That was the reason the chamber was left out, and all the committees associated to the chamber were left out. What did I mean? Normal working hours, 9 or 5. Does anybody think different? Yeah, we all know it's different. So it's, when you say normal working hours, 9 or 5 is what I meant. Next time I say normal working hours, I'll put 9 or 5. Yeah, all meetings are open to councillors. Of course, do you go to all meetings, councillor? Would it benefit you if you could? Shrug your shoulders. Wouldn't benefit you. I think it would benefit you. And effectively, by being able to watching that recording, it would be a benefit for elected members as well. Sound was mentioned as an issue. We didn't have anything on there. There was a lot of different levels we could have went to. Clip-on Bluetooth microphones, typically a set of 6 is under £100. That would mount up to cover a meeting like this, but we're not quite getting to the 160,000 level. Councillor Purvis, I noticed you were a maybe considering this. I just wondered, have you asked anybody? Maybe that's the way to go forward on issues. So ultimately, as Councillor Francis said, we're not asking for a definitive decision here, something we're held by. We're just asking not to rely on a report which has sat in the drawer for 14 years, is to look at what's available now for consideration via Cabinet. Just seems a reasonable ask to me, and I hope everybody can support this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Is the motion agreed? Okay, we have some dissenting voices there, so I'm going to ask the monitoring officer to conduct the vote. Have you got 5 persons? You've got to stand, it's just part of the etiquette. Right? Yes, you've got more than numbers. Thank you, Councillor Roberts.
That will come. Yeah, new one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If when I call out their names, if members could turn on the microphone and indicate whether they are for, against the motion, or whether they wish to abstain. Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Against, no support.
Councillor Barclay.
Against.
Councillor Best.
Against.
Councillor Brennan. Councillor Clare.
Against.
Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Dawes.
Against.
Councillor Paul Dean.
Against.
Councillor Stephen Dean.
Against.
Councillor Dixon.
Against.
Councillor Donaldson. Councillor Ellison.
Against.
Councillor Foster.
For.
Councillor Francis.
For.
Councillor Gibson. Councillor Guy.
For.
Councillor Hay. Councillor Herbert. Councillor Huntley. Councillor Kennedy.
For.
Councillor Kilgour.
Against.
Councillor Malcolm. Councillor K. Maxwell.
Against.
Councillor N. Maxwell. Councillor McHugh. Councillor McKeown.
For.
Councillor Milburn. Councillor Milne.
For.
Councillor Peacock. Councillor Porthouse. Councillor Potts. Sorry, Councillor Potts. Councillor Proudlock. Councillor Purvis. Councillor Roberts. Councillor Smith. Councillor Stonehouse.
For.
Councillor Strike. Councillor Taylor.
Against.
Councillor Thompson.
For.
Councillor Trainer. And Councillor Yeah.
For.
Thank you.
It's 13 for the motion and 28 against, so the motion is not agreed. Thank you. Motion 2 has been submitted by councillors Smith, Stephen Dean, Paul Dean, councillor Keegan, Huntley, Porthouse, Potts, Carter, Melling, Ellison and Kilgour. Councillor Smith, please present your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion calls for the continued proactive enforcement of measures to prevent the use of vapes by children under the age of 18 and also to promote the recycling of disposable vapes. In July of this year, a number of councils asked the local government association to call for the outright ban of the sale and manufacture of single-use vapes by 2024. While this motion was set out the concerns regarding the environmental impact of single-use vapes and their use amongst children, it does not call for a ban. There is a need to strike the right balance between protecting young people and the environment and supporting smokers to quit by using vapes instead of cigarettes. Tobacco remains the single biggest cause of preventable illness and death, with approximately 5,000 people in the Northeast dying each year from smoking. An outright ban on disposable vapes would impact their accessibility for smokers who want to reduce the risk of illness and death from a smoking-related disease. Instead, this motion asks South Tyneside Council to continue to implement measures to enforce existing regulations on the control of the sale and safe disposal of the products. A 2022 study by Material Focus found that 14 million single-use vapes are purchased every month in the UK, and over 50% of them are thrown away. This equates to 1.3 million single-use vapes being thrown away every week. Single-use vapes contain lithium batteries. Lithium is a precious resource, and the waste generated could instead produce batteries for 1,200 electric vehicles every year. At this stage of the climate crisis, we cannot afford to waste such valuable resources. The products are marked as disposable, so the messaging around recycling them is not clear enough. The council is asked to work to encourage retailers in the borough to participate in the take-back scheme, which makes electrical recycling points available in every store. The council is asked to advertise that residents can safely recycle their vapes at Middlefields to prevent them being thrown away in general waste or discarded in the streets. The selling of vapes to under 18s is illegal. However, the Ash Youth Survey of 2022 showed 10.4% of 11 to 15-year-olds had tried vaping. This number rises to 29% of 16 to 17-year-olds. 45% of the young people surveyed purchase their vapes in shops. The use of vapes potentially exposes children to a lifelong nicotine addiction. The motion asks the council to ensure retailers are compliant with the law by reminding them of their responsibilities. The council's trading standards service is asked to support compliance with regulations and take enforcement action when necessary. Schools in the borough have done important work in making children aware of the dangers of using vapes, so the motion calls for the council to continue to work with schools to make them aware of the resources and toolkits available to raise awareness amongst children and also parents. Disposable vapes are often cheap and packaged in bright colours, displayed prominently by retailers. This marketing strategy makes them more appealing to under 18s. The motion calls on MPs Kate Osborne and Emma Buck to write to the Secretary of State to ask that vapes are displayed in plain packaging and marketed as medicinal products to aid in the cessation of smoking. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Is that motion seconded?
Yes, I second it.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. The motion is now open to debate by members. Do any members wish to ask a question, speak, or move an amendment?
Can I first say something regarding it?
Yes, Councillor. Are you speaking as a seconder now?
Yes.
Right, okay.
And I'm seconding this motion, and I agree with everything my colleague is raising in this important motion. I would like to outline some of the health risks of vaping. These include, addiction. E-cigarettes contain nicotine, a drug that's highly addictive. You don't have to vape every day to get addicted. And it causes anxiety and depression. That is one of the things which nicotine causes. It makes anxiety and depression worse. It also affects memory, concentration, self-control, and attention, especially in developing brains. Becoming a smoker, people vape are more likely to start smoking regular tobacco cigarettes and may be more likely to develop other addictions in future. There is some evidence that vaping can actually cause sexual dysfunction in men. It can cause sleep problems, exposure to cancer-causing chemicals, chronic bronchitis, lung damage, and that can be life-threatening. I would suggest anybody, these young children who are taking these vaping at an early age, you should consider, trying to stop now, because the addiction it causes, it's in growing brain may set up pathways later addiction to other substances. Nicotine affects the brain development. This can make it harder to learn and concentrate. Some of the brain changes are permanent. It can affect your mood and ability to control your impulses. The vapor made from e-cigarettes is not made of water. The vapor contains harmful chemicals and very fine particles that are inhaled into the lungs and exhaled into the environment. And these young children as well who are taking it, there should be more, if they want to be sportsmen or anything, they should not use these vaping at all, because you want to be best in sports, and vaping may lead to lung inflammation. So, and another big reason is the cost. It's expensive. The cost of cartridges over time starts to add up. Instead, you could spend their money on other things you need to enjoy. I would go against tobacco companies advertising as well. Many e-cigarettes are made by the same companies that produce regular cigarettes. The marketing targets young people by making fun flavors for e-cigarettes and showing young, healthy people vaping. They're trying to make these young people their next lifetime customers. So I would hope that all members will be agreeing to pass this motion. Thank you.
As the original proposer, do you wish to reply to the debate?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is the motion agreed? Thank you. Okay, the last item of business is the conclusion of business. So, colleagues, that concludes the business of council today. And I thank everyone, including those in the public gallery, for your patience, and those watching from home for your attendance this evening. Good night and God bless.